The building was nearly silent, its echoing hallways carrying only the faint hum of the flickering fluorescent lights above. Ethan pushed his mop slowly across the tiled floor, the smell of lemon-scented cleaner mixing with the faint staleness of paper and dust. His shoulders ached from another long day. Being a janitor wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work, and steady was all that mattered to him. He had a little girl at home, waiting for him, and every floor he polished, every trash can he emptied, was for her. It was late, almost too late. Most of the office workers had gone home hours ago, but Ethan was used to that. He was the last one out most nights, his only company the creaks of the old building and his own thoughts. But then, just as he wrung out the mop for the final time that night, he heard the sharp click of heels against the floor. He looked up. A young woman hurried toward the elevator, her bag slung over her shoulder, phone in her hand. She looked exhausted, her eyes half closed, her pace quick and distracted. Ethan noticed the faint glow above the elevator doors. The out-of-service light was flickering, weak and inconsistent, as though it had given up trying to warn anyone. Ethan froze. He'd overheard maintenance earlier, muttering about the elevator's cables and how unsafe it was until repairs were finished in the morning. His heart pounded as he realized she hadn't seen the warning. She was heading straight toward it. "Don't enter the elevator." His voice thundered down the empty corridor, echoing so loud that even he startled at the sound. The woman stopped dead in her tracks, her hand just inches from the call button. She turned, her eyes wide, confusion written across her face. At first, she looked like she thought he was joking, maybe even trying to scare her. But then the building itself seemed to confirm his warning. The elevator doors rattled violently, grinding against metal with an eerie shriek. Sparks flew from the corner as if some hidden circuit had just given out. The woman's breath hitched. She stumbled back a step, clutching her bag tight against her chest. The elevator gave one last groan, and the cables above moaned in protest, a sound deep and terrifying, like a beast straining under its own weight. For a moment, both of them just stared. If she had stepped in, even half a second later, she might have been trapped inside. Her lips trembled. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice breaking. Her face drained of color, and she pressed a hand against the wall for support. Her whole body shook with the realization of what could have just happened. Ethan took a deep breath, relief washing over him in a slow wave. He let go of the mop handle and wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve. His voice softened, steady but kind. "It's not safe. You should take the stairs tonight." The woman stared at him for a long moment, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She tried to speak, but no words came out at first. Finally, she whispered, You saved me." Ethan gave a small, tired smile, shaking his head. "No, just did what anyone would have done." His gaze drifted back to the mop, the dull, simple tool in his hands that had become his life. He turned away slightly, as if to shield himself from the weight of her gratitude. He didn't see himself as a hero, just a man trying to get through another shift, keep food on the table, and make it home to his daughter. For a moment, silence hung between them. The woman stood there, still shaken, still processing how close she had come to disaster. Her breathing was uneven, her heart still racing. She opened her mouth to say something more, but Ethan was already moving, pushing his mop bucket slowly back down the hall. He didn't wait for thanks. He didn't expect it. He just wanted her to get home safe. "Be careful," he said quietly over his shoulder, the words almost swallowed by the vast emptiness of the building. The woman remained by the elevator, staring at the broken doors as if they were a mirror reflecting the fragility of her life. She thought about how quickly everything could have ended. Her job, her family, her future, snatched away in a blink. And all because she hadn't noticed a flickering red light. Her eyes followed Ethan's retreating figure. There was something in his presence that struck her, something beyond his warning. He looked tired, worn down by life, but steady, like a man who had carried more than his share of burdens and yet still found the strength to care about someone else's safety. She swallowed hard, her heart tightening in her chest. When she finally turned toward the stairwell, her legs felt heavy, her hands trembling on the railing as she descended. Each step echoed the thought in her mind, "That man just saved my life." Ethan, meanwhile, continued with his work as if nothing had happened. He wrung out the mop again, the water sloshing back into the bucket, and carried on cleaning the last few corners. His thoughts drifted back to his daughter, wondering if she was asleep yet, if she had remembered to brush her teeth before bed. For him, the night was just another shift, another paycheck, another chance to keep going. He didn't know that for her, it was something else entirely. For her, that night had changed everything. She would never forget the shout that stopped her in her tracks. She would never forget the janitor who cared enough to yell. And she would never forget the way her heart reminded her, sometimes strangers save you in ways that family can't, and sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest impact. The morning sun slipped through the thin curtains of Ethan's small, weathered house, painting streaks of gold across the worn wooden floor. The kitchen smelled faintly of scrambled eggs and toast, a simple breakfast that his daughter, Lily, loved. Ethan moved around the cramped space with practiced ease, humming softly as he flipped the eggs, trying to make the morning feel lighthearted. Life wasn't easy, but he did everything he could to make it feel normal for her. "Daddy, can you make them shaped like hearts?" Lily asked from the table, her messy brown hair falling into her eyes as she colored with broken crayons on the back of an old grocery receipt. Ethan chuckled, using the spatula to shape the eggs as best he could. "They might look more like clouds than hearts, but you'll just have to use your imagination." She giggled, and the sound filled the room with warmth that made the peeling paint on the walls and the creaking floorboards easier to ignore. For Ethan, moments like this were everything. He was a single dad, a janitor, a man who carried exhaustion in his bones, but none of that mattered when his daughter smiled. Just as he placed the plate in front of her, a sharp knock came at the door. Ethan frowned. Visitors were rare. Their home was tucked away at the edge of town, and the few people who came by were usually neighbors dropping off mail by mistake. He wiped his hands on a towel and walked over cautiously. When he opened the door, he froze. Standing there was the young woman from the night before. Her hair was neatly tied back, though her expression was nervous, as if she wasn't sure she should be there. In her hands, she carried a white box tied with a thin ribbon. The sight of her on his doorstep seemed almost unreal, as if the events of the previous night had followed him home. I hope I'm not intruding," she said softly. "I wasn't sure if I should come, but I had to." Ethan blinked, still trying to process. "You're the woman from the elevator." She nodded quickly, her eyes dropping for a moment. "Yes, last night. If you hadn't yelled, if you hadn't stopped me." Her voice cracked, and she looked down at the box in her hands. "I don't even want to think about what would have happened. I wanted to thank you. Properly." From behind him, Lily peeked around the corner, curiosity written all over her small face. "Daddy, who is it?" Ethan glanced back at her, then at the woman, unsure of what to say. "Just someone Daddy helped yesterday." The woman knelt slightly, her expression softening as she met Lily's wide eyes. "Your dad saved my life," she said gently. "He's a real hero." Lily's eyes lit up, and she ran over to hug her father's leg. "I told you you're a superhero, Daddy," she exclaimed, her voice full of pride. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He'd never thought of himself that way. To him, being a janitor was about hard work and survival, not heroism. He shifted uncomfortably, but the woman's gaze was steady, sincere. "I brought some pastries," she said, holding out the box. "I thought maybe you and your daughter could use a little treat." Ethan hesitated but finally accepted the box, the warmth of her gesture settling over him. "You didn't have to do this," he murmured. "I wanted to," she replied. "I couldn't just walk away from what you did for me." Inside, the three of them sat around the small kitchen table. The woman introduced herself as Rachel. She asked Lily about her drawings, listening intently as the little girl explained each crayon scribble in detail. When Rachel noticed the pictures taped to the fridge, sketches of flowers, stars, and castles, her eyes softened even more. "These are beautiful," she said. "You're very talented, Lily." Lily beamed. "I want to be an artist when I grow up. Daddy says I can be anything." Rachel looked at Ethan then, really looked at him, the weariness in his eyes, the calloused hands, the quiet strength that seemed to hold the whole house together. She saw a man who had given so much of himself for his child, a man who worked in the shadows yet carried a light inside him. "You know," Rachel said gently, "what you did yesterday, you didn't just save me. You gave me a second chance at everything. And I want to help give something back. Ethan shook his head quickly. I don't need anything, really. I was just doing what anyone would have done. But Rachel leaned forward, her voice firm but kind. Not everyone would have cared enough to shout. Not everyone would have noticed. But you did, and that matters. She glanced around the small kitchen, the worn furniture, the stack of unpaid bills partially hidden on the counter. Please, let me do something. Ethan's instinct was to resist, to protect his pride. But then Lily tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, maybe she can come to my art show at school next week. Can she? Rachel's face lit up. I would love that. Something shifted in Ethan then. Maybe it wasn't about pride. Maybe it was about letting kindness flow both ways, accepting it as much as giving it. He nodded slowly, a small smile forming. From that day forward, Rachel became more than just a visitor. She checked in often, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with supplies for Lily's art, sometimes just to share a cup of coffee. Her presence wove itself gently into their lives, not out of obligation, but out of gratitude and genuine care. For Ethan, it was humbling. For Lily, it was magical, someone who believed in her dreams just as much as her father did. And for Rachel, it was healing. She had been saved from tragedy, but what she gained was far more than survival. She found family where she least expected it, in the small house of a janitor and his little girl. One selfless act in a dim hallway had rippled outward, creating bonds none of them could have predicted. And as Ethan watched his daughter laugh with Rachel, he realized something he hadn't in a long time. Hope wasn't just for other people. Sometimes, even in the hardest of lives, it found its way back home.